We got one going right now. Russell Gahagan back at you with another video from Russell's Fishing Tech. Today we're going to talk copper wire / weighted steel 101. What is copper wire and what is weighted steel? Well, they're both weighted lines. I've talked about that in one of my earlier videos, talking about weighted lines, which one's right for you. But today we're going to focus 100% on copper and weighted steel. First of all, both of those are similar products in the sense that they're a weighted line that dives down in the water without needing any weight, okay? The difference between the two is this. Weighted steel is quite a bit more easy to work with for the weekend angler who doesn't have maybe a lot of experience with copper. It doesn't ball up, it doesn't backlash as bad as the copper does if you're not careful with it. But in my opinion, the weighted steel doesn't dive quite as deep and also moves around in the water column more like lead core. So copper, on the other hand, which I'll show you kind of here, this is Blood Run's, super copper, right? It's like a silver in color. I think they call it nickel coated, maybe. This is the 45-pound Blood Run copper, and this is the 45-pound weighted steel by Torpedo. Copper is a lot more, in my opinion, a lot more straight in the sense of it doesn't move around in the water column based on currents and speed as much. It's not as affected by those variables. What it gets down to depth-wise is pretty much what it does get down to. So we're going to basically talk about the basics of what you need if you want to get a copper or weighted steel setup, and what are the right components to have that. So first we'll start with the rod. The rod we've talked about a bunch in a bunch of my videos already, and that's why it's the #1 selling rod here at TRS Sheboygan and TRS Appleton, is the Okuma Classic Pro Copper Rod. One thing is with the weighted steel setups or the copper setups, you do have to have the stainless guides. You cannot use a regular rod with ceramic guides. It will chew through that very quickly, and you will not only damage the rod, but you'll probably damage the line and break it off. So you do need the high-end guides here, the stainless guides that this particular rod offers. I like this rod because it's only $45, so it's inexpensive. Granted, you can spend more money if you want and get like the White Diamond or one of the other models out there, Convector Pro or Big Lake, but we sell primarily that one because, in my opinion, I think it gets the job done, and there's no need for that, nicer one in this particular setup. So as far as the rod goes, that's your option. Now, reel-wise, you got the two series of reels that we talk a lot about. You got the convectors and you got the cold waters. When it comes to copper or weighted steel, we basically use two sizes of the reels. In the convectors, we use the 45D, and in the 55L, the 45D we use primarily for anything between a 100 copper all the way up to a 250 copper. So like a 200 copper dives about 45 feet. That's a very popular setup for us. 250 is probably down in that 50-55 foot range. So for ample backing, we use anything between a 100 copper, which isn't real popular, 150s, 200s, 250s are real popular. We use that 45 size reel, the 45D in the convector series. Once we get over a 250, if you're going to go 300, 350, 400, 450, we go to that CV55L. I've mentioned in my videos before, and I'll continue to mention it again, I do not suggest high-speed reels for copper setups. Some guys like them, and hey, that's your personal preference, but for me and for most of my customers, I prefer the standard speed reels. These heavy setups, and any of this stuff is really heavy, is very difficult to reel in with that higher speed reels. If you're looking for the cold water series, it's the same thing. We're looking at the 453D in the cold water. That'll do the 100 copper all the way up to the 250 copper. And then the 553LS is what we do the 300 plus, 300, 350, 400, 450 coppers we do on that reel. That LS, remember, in the cold water is not a high speed. That's actually a lower speed reel. That's the premier reel for these high-end copper or weighted steel setups. So one thing I will suggest, if you're a weekend angler that's been fishing a long time, or a charter captain or something, and you are comfortable with your spooling your own reels when it comes to copper or weighted steel, awesome. But for most people, they don't have a line winder at home. So for me to show you like on a line winder how we do it probably isn't going to help you at all. I would suggest that you take it to your local, tackle store that's experienced with setting up coppers or weighted steels, or you're more than welcome to come here and get it from us, or send your reels here if you want us to do them. But these are setups you're going to want done professionally and right. I've had lots of customers over the years come back to me very disappointed that they bought stuff and either spooled them themselves or bought stuff and had their local place do it that didn't have experience with this stuff, and they lost it instantly and had all kinds of problems. And it's not inexpensive, so you definitely want to make sure that it's done right. So line components, we already talked about the weighted steel and the copper. Whether you go copper or weighted steel, you can do, like I said, 100, 150, 200, 250, 300, 350, 400, 450, all the way on up. That's going to cover those water column sections from 25 feet down, all the way down to 90 or 100 feet down in that 450 range. So that gives you a very big range if this is the particular board setups that you want to run. Now the backing is really simple. We use 50-pound braid for all of the backing on our copper or weighted steel setups. I definitely do not suggest using mono for two reasons. Number one, I like to release the boards that we use, and mono is a struggle to use the Sam's Pro release. But more importantly, the braid is stronger and is thinner, so we can get a lot more line on. You need a lot of backing, especially now with the size of the fish on Lake Michigan, and Lake Ontario also has a healthy fishery right now. You get 17 to 25 pound and on up kings, they'll pull a couple hundred yards of line out on a really good run, and that's the max you're going to get on some of these setups. Some you might get 300 yards of line, but some of them you might only get 200 yards of line. So that's why you need the right size reel for the right particular length, and you need the right backing. If you use the wrong kind, too heavy, or mono instead of braid, you're not going to get the backing that you want, and you're not going to have the success that you want. So 50-pound braid backer, doesn't matter what color it is, it's just a backer anyways. Fish aren't going to see that. There's going to be a lot of line out between the backer and the fish, so that's no problem. And then on the business end, and this is something I've really promoted for a long time, I like mono. I like the Andy mono. What I usually do is if guys run a lot of spoons, we'll put 20 on for them. If they run a mix of spoons and flashers, we'll do 25. And if they're 100% flasher people, we'll even put 30 on some of the guys' reels for a leader. And what I like is a 50-foot leader. So you'll have your backing, then you'll have your copper or weighted steel, the amount of length you want out, and then at the business end, you're gonna have a 50-foot mono leader if we rig it up for you. And that leader, I start at 50. You can cut that on down to 25 or 30 if you get some nicks in it. Once you get down to that 25 or 30 mark, I suggest that we start all the way back over and go back to a new 50-foot leader. So it's important to keep an eye on that leader. It's also important to keep an eye on the braid knot and the braid area where you join the braid and the weighted steel or copper, because what will happen is when you're applying the board, you can get some damage, some line wear, some nicks in the braid at that point. So from time to time, it doesn't hurt to cut a piece back of your braid backer 5, 6, 8 feet just to keep that braid backer healthy at the spot where it joins here and you're attaching the board. Last but not least is the planer board. You do need the right size planer board. I see a lot of my customers come in and they want to get into this bigger setups. The first question they ask me is, can I use my walleye boards? Whether that's an offshore or 12 or a church walleye board or whatever. And the quick and easy answer is no. You can. The issue with that being is that those boards are going to drag back really far and more into the middle of your spread. They're not going to pull out to the side properly. And because they aren't going to do that, anytime you get a bite on a downrigger or a dipsy diver setup, it's going to instantly go into those copper or weighted steel setups. So I suggest the offshore SST Pro Mag planer board. Otherwise, Gator Bait and Tackle makes a big board. Opti makes a bigger board. Church makes a TX44. We sell the Ziggy boards here if you like the wood style board. He makes a copper size board. So whatever it is that you have a preference of, make sure that it's the bigger size board that can handle up to these 450 foot setups. Even for those 150 coppers, I'd suggest a bigger size board, because you are going to notice some drag on your small stuff if you use those weighted steel or copper setups, even on the lighter ones. So that gives you a great explanation of everything from the rod, the reel, the line, the amount, the board, the whole gamut that you should that can help you decide which weighted line you want, weighted steel or copper, and what you want to go with. So if you have any questions, feel free to call me at the store, shoot me an email, and you can subscribe to the channel, hit the button up above. Also, if you didn't see my video yesterday, we got a nice new text community out there. You can text join to that number and get on that community. We'll start pumping out some info on there. So good luck fishing.